Hey yoga mamas and friends. Today I'm going to share a video about one of my all-time favorite poses, which is downward dog. The Sanskrit name is Adho Mukha Svanasana. And I just want to share some variations. As usual, I do my best to make most poses suitable for most people. So I'm going to show you some different ways to modify it so that it can be more comfortable for your body. And it's not really always an issue of can or can't do. Sometimes just trying it in a different way could be really interesting and just give your body a little bit something different to experience. Because if we do the same movements in the same poses exactly the same way every time, that can be pretty hard on the body. It can actually create repetitive stress injuries. So let's take a playful attitude and try downward dog some different ways. So on your mat, and you don't really even need a mat, but it's nice to have one, especially if your knees are sensitive. You can shake your arms out. Usually before I do downward dog, I'll warm up into a bit with cat-cow, which is cat is rounding the spine, cow is arching the spine, and just go back and forth with your breath. You might exhale as you round the spine, and you might inhale as you arch the spine. So just warming up that spine. And then come to neutral. So as you're here, it's nice to warm up the shoulders too. The shoulders will be doing a lot of work in downward dog. So as you have the hands on the mat, the toes can be tucked or pointed back. And just without moving the lower spine or the mid back, you can just sink the chest down between the arms and then push the hands into the ground. So I learned this from actually various teachers, but more recently I've done this through a video with Bree Johnson, Heart and Bones Yoga Studio. And it's a great way to just open up the upper back. And what I'm doing is, as I sink the chest down, I'm retracting the shoulder blades. That means they're coming closer together. And as I push the ground away, I'm protracting the shoulder blades, which means they're coming further apart from one another. And I actually like to show that to you on the video. So you might be able to feel it, but it's nice to see that as I retract, the shoulder blades come together. As I protract, they come apart. So try that a few times yourself. Arms up and just, you're reaching with the fingers, but the action is coming from the shoulder blades. So the shoulder blade is moving closer to the spine as the hands come back, and the shoulder blades are moving further from the spine as you reach forward. It's a little bit like rolling the shoulders, except for it's forward and back. Okay, so that's nice. Warm up the shoulders. Now it's time for downward dog. The fingers are spread really wide so that you have that support and you evenly engage the muscles in your forearm. Come into your tabletop, tuck the toes under, and just very slowly bring the hips to the sky. So the action is hips to the sky, pushing down through the hands. When you get there, you can, pedal your feet. You might wiggle your hips. Maybe you turn the head side to side, and really into creating a sense of fluidity and movement as you hold a pose so that you don't get rigid. All right, so remember that rhomboid push-up? We're sort of gonna do it here a little. You can bend the elbows a little and then push the ground away as you straighten the arms. And try that a few times. It does not have to be a huge bend in the elbows. Sometimes it helps to bend the knees. A few times bending the elbows and then lengthening them can do a lot to release your shoulders and to create that strength in the arms and shoulders. All right, so the same, as you keep the arms still, now you do the same thing with your knees. Maybe bend them a bit and then straighten. And as I do it, I can try to isolate that movement in the legs so my hips stay more or less in the same spot. The breath is always moving. Oh, it feels so nice, especially if I have a little trouble bring my heels to the ground. It doesn't matter. I just bring that movement in and I see what kind of sensations this small movement in the knees can bring. Good, okay. If you're very tight in the back of the legs, I almost always recommend bending the knees a little, especially if your spine is rounded. If you bend the knees, it will allow you to push down through the hands and lengthen that spine. Good. Keep the neck and the head relaxed. You can always turn the head side to side. Good. And then we're gonna walk the hands back, standing forward bend, also known as Uttanasana. I'm gonna stand up and talk at you for a second. So that's some ways to bring some fluidity and warm up the body in your downward dog, especially if you're not doing a whole session or a whole class and you just want a little movement in your day. Okay, so another nice way to come into it is people a lot of times wonder, how far apart should my feet be from my hands? So I'm gonna show you some different ways to play with that. There's no like hard, fast rule about it. So you come down, Uttanasana, standing forward bend. And you might walk the hands forward into plank. So the shoulders are above the wrist, the heels are, they don't have to be right above the balls of the feet, but somewhere there. This is your high plank. So if you just keep the hands and feet where they are and hinge at the hip, there's your downward dog. Okay, sometimes people like to step in and make that distance between the feet and the hands shorter. I mean, it's totally fine. If that feels great to you, you can always do that. But what is also a nice warm-up is to go back and forth, inhaling forward to plank and exhaling back to downward dog, and just see how that creates a little wave in my spine as I come forward to plank. Keep that length in my spine and just pull the hips up and back. And then I'm in downward dog. As I roll forward to plank, I round the spine a little. I look back as I tuck my chin and lengthen the spine from the bottom all the way up till my head moves last. Let's try it a few times. Exhaling downward dog. Inhaling, roll forward. The head is the last to move, just looking at the ground. A lovely strengthening mini sequence. If you don't like things like push-ups, I'm not saying this does exactly the same thing as push-ups, but it does call on some of your core and arm strength. All right, so let's come back to downward dog. Actually, let's come to our knees and just shake the hands out. You might circle the wrists a few times. All right, so that's another way to warm up into it. The first was with cat, cow, and the rhomboid push-up. Then we just did the plank to downward dog. And then as we settle into downward dog and play with it more, we can see that, hey, guess what? It also doesn't totally matter how far apart the feet are. You can step them out wide to the sides, and the hands too. That's just a slightly different variation. And you can try that yourself and feel, that kind of engages things in a different way. I might stretch my muscles in a different way. I like to kind of rock side to side. That brings a little fluidity in the shoulder and the hip joints. And it's just nice to try something that's slightly different. All right, coming down. Again, let's kind of give some love to the wrists. It's a lot of pressure on the wrists. And if it's actually too much for your wrist, just generally, we can try dolphin pose. So dolphin is downward dog on the forearms. So what you would do is when you go down on your mat on your forearms like this, you're going to grab the upper arms like that with the fingers. That will give you the distance, and then you can interlace your hands. Give you a good distance between the elbows and interlace. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, and then really just relax your head in dolphin. Here I am on my knees. I'm tucking the toes and then slowly straining the legs. And the legs do not have to fully strain, but I always, just like in downward dog, like to add that little wiggle or pedaling my heels side to side. And just as you would push down through your hands in downward dog, you're going to push down through your forearms. And that will give you some lift. You can see how that gives some lift through my hips. Stay here and breathe a couple of times. This is a lovely headstand prep, or even headstand alternative if you're not into doing headstand. Okay. Wow, so that does give my wrists a break, but it's a pretty good little workout for the shoulders. All right, so I love downward dog, but I'm aware that not everybody loves it. And a lot of times it's because of all that weight that comes down through the hands and arms. So some variations on that. You can use a table or a chair. So you bring, your hands to the table. And here you can see it's nice because it will be straight. Your wrist will be straight, whereas in downward dog, your wrist is extended, right? So here you have straight wrist, and you would just step back and try to line up your hips above the knees and ankles. The head relaxes between the arms, so you're looking straight down. And again, you can add a little bend to the knees. You want to aim for lengthen the spine. So if you tend to sag your ribs and almost do like a cat position in the spine, just think of either pulling the ribs up for the spine, or think of your mid-back like reaching up just gently toward the ceiling without rounding your back. So staying here, a few breaths, adding a little movement if you want. And the other option is if you don't have a table, or if you prefer a chair for some reason, like if the chair is a better height, same thing, you might want to put it against the wall so it doesn't slide away. And just step back, line up your hips over your knees and the heels, and just stretch your fingers out so you're stretching the arm muscles in your forearm. Okay, very similar. You can use the wall. I got a wall for my daughter's art right here. But here you can see if I use the wall, again, now my wrist is extended like it was in downward dog on the floor, but I don't have so much weight on the hands when I do it here. You can even do a variation of dolphin at the wall, so you just measure that distance between the elbows, put the elbows on the wall, and then walk back until your hips are somewhere above your knees and ankles. Honestly, you could do that on the chair or the table too. Same thing. Not necessarily to save your wrist, but it actually will give you a little different opening in the shoulder area. Okay, so that's a lot. Notice when you're doing any of those variations, there can be a tendency to shrink the shoulders up to the ears, so do your best to bring the shoulders and keep that space between, bring the shoulders down and keep the space between the ears and the shoulders. It can be helpful to do little rotations in the shoulder, internally rotating, externally rotating, just to get that sense. And notice when I externally rotate, the shoulders naturally drop down. So, that's another movement. I don't want to get too detailed or technical. I just want to give you a little something to work with. So I hope you enjoyed that. In the post on my Substack newsletter, that's linked to this video, I will also include a short video on one aspect of downward dog that I think is important, and it's that hinge at the hip that will keep your spine relaxed and fluid. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you try these things on your own away from this video and throughout your days, throughout your weeks, and just really feel into how downward dog looks for you. What I meant is some people really fixate on what does it look like? Do I look like I'm in the right position? And I want to just say that it's not as much how you look as how you feel and how you experience the pose. So let me know if you give it a try or if you have any questions, and leave a comment here. Thanks for watching.